Are you looking to find your best fit career, regardless of whether you're just starting out, looking for a change, or mid-full life reboot? If so, then you are in the right place. My name is Leon. This is Body Mind 360, and in this video, I will explain to you everything that comes with my best fit career identification package. I will also review with you samples of the reports that you will receive with your purchase. If this is your first time watching and you like my content, then make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification icon to be alerted of new videos. Now let's get started. So the purpose of this package is to help individuals figure out what to do with their lives when it comes to career planning. In my professional experience, I have seen this help at every stage of life. This package is extremely popular with college-bound individuals trying to remove the trial and error many of us experience in college. It is also great for those looking to make a career change later in life, whether it is including going back to school or not. With your purchase, you will gain access to online completion of 2 assessments, the Myers Briggs Type Indicator and a Strong Interest Inventory. Based on your results, I will prepare for you 2 PDFs that will include 4 specific reports. First, you will receive an MBTI career report that will provide you with career feedback based on your innate personality type. The second report is the Strong Interest Inventory Profile, which provides career feedback based on your unique interests. The third report is a free college report that provides you optional feedback if you are considering going back to school. The final report is a combined report that will provide you with a unique perspective that factors in both your innate personality type as well as your interests when it comes to career feedback. You can download sample PDFs of these reports in the description below. With your purchase, you will also receive a 45-minute video consultation with me where I will verify your Myers Briggs personality type results and review your report with you. I can also accommodate phone consultations upon request. If you would like to learn more about me and my background, then you can watch my channel introduction video linked in the description below. Now, for the next part of this video, I will go ahead and review the 2 PDFs that you will receive with your purchase. As noted earlier, you can find a download link to sample reports in the description below. So now we're going to go ahead and go over the Myers Briggs Type Indicator career report. This first page is, again, just your cover page. And on page 2, you're going to get a basic overview of the process as I'm going to discuss to you, talking about some of the data. Again, the Myers Briggs Type Indicator has been around for decades. It has a great interaction with the ONET database that the Strong Interest Inventory also utilizes when it comes to classifications of occupations, and it's going to be a great free tool set that gets linked here. You're definitely going to want to utilize when researching occupations. Page 3 is the meat and potato of this particular report. It's going to tell you your 4-letter type, and down below it's going to have your clarity of reported preferences. This is the most important data for me as an interpreter. So what we're looking at here is that when we have high scores, specifically in this case 25 to 30 and even 20 to 30, we can extend out a little bit. When we have those scores, we simply feel really confident that it's very likely that the type was assessed appropriately. When you have lower scores, especially in that slight category, so under 5, this prompts me to have an additional conversation during our consultation to see if you truly are an F, or maybe you're a natural thinker that for specific reasons has spent a lot of time developing your feeling side, and when you took this assessment, you leaned on that more heavily, and so you assessed as a feeler. neither is wrong, but we want to get to the bottom of your innate preference, and then we can talk about what it means to be adaptive. Page 4 is going to kind of talk about how your results relate to preferred work tasks, work environments. So already gonna say how that kind of comes out in that environment. You will also notice that throughout this report and the next report that we're going to review, there's going to be action steps that are going to be provided. So it's going to get you to initiate and work within your report. And if you manage to do that, obviously it's much more likely that you're going to get more out of the report. Page 5, it talks about how your type will actually impact your career exploration, some of your strengths, some of the challenges, and suggested strategies for dealing with those challenges. Page 6 is talking about how your type affects your career development. And again, similar format, some of your strengths, things that will be a little easier for you, some things you may run into that are a big of a challenge, and how to deal with that. So identifying potential problem areas and giving you suggestions how to fix them. Then you're going to have an introduction to the job families and occupations for specific to ENFPs. So this is going to talk about more technical jargon, but basically there is a specific list based off MBTI results with data that shows where ENFPs tend to lean towards when it comes to careers. And that data is going to be shown on page 8. Now, when you look at this data, it's very important to note that you're going to have these scores of 61 to 100 are most attractive, and then moderate, 41 to 60, least attractive, 0 to 40. Now, this doesn't mean that the top option, 100, is a perfect job for you. It simply represents where we find the highest concentrations of ENFPs that love what they do. And that's a big emphasis. If you're miserable at a job, you don't count as part of the statistic. So we find the highest percentage of ENFPs, they tend to go into personal care and services. But also, if you look at any of these that are basically 80 plus, so the 87s, the 88 to 91 in this example, those are all areas where you see really high concentrations of ENFPs, and you can probably confidently look in those directions and feel pretty good about things. Now you will notice there's a bit of a drop-off after that, so in the 70s and 60s here. And if I were to really assess these careers, what we generally find is that one of the 4 elements don't align quite as well. So maybe they're careers that are meant for ENTPs. So they lean more on the logical side of things when making decisions. So forcing you to adapt from a feeler to a thinking mode. For some people, that's a deal breaker. And so they would no longer count as being happy in these fields, and they wouldn't be represented. Others are still represented as happy, so hence why the scores are still relatively high, but not quite as high. When you get to the moderately attractive job families, 41 to 60, further drop off into the 50s and 40s a lot of times. And so here, 2 out of the 4 areas are going to be a match. So a bit of a mixed bag. And depending on you and the specific personality type, some people are more adaptive than others, so they may be able to adapt on 2 fronts and be happy. Others, that's a deal breaker. So again, hence lesser scores here. And finally, least attractive job families. Some personality types have a very big list here, some it's smaller. But these are areas that, while statistically you could be happy in them, and there's definitely exceptions to the rule. So obviously the people noted here are happy and they love what they do. But statistically it's way less likely, because you're being asked to, in the extreme circumstance, function as the polar opposite of what's natural to you. So if you think of that, imagine somebody said, hey, I want you to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, but small catch is I need you to be the polar opposite of everything that's comfortable to you. That might almost sound silly. And that's the idea here. Is that, again, it can be an option, but it probably is not statistically the area you would want to lean on first. Page 9, it's going to identify your most popular occupations. It's also going to give you some instructions of how to look them up. Page 10, it talks about your bottom 10 and also provides some of those caveats that, again, it's not that you can't be happy in these jobs. In fact, there's a whole section for tips for succeeding in an atypical occupation, because we've all met, a doctor or a police officer, somebody that seems really out of place compared to others in their fields, but it works for them. Again, exceptions to the rule, it can still happen though. So that's the Myers Briggs Type Indicator Career Report. I really hope that you have found it helpful. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at this PDF that technically has 3 reports in one. Name's kind of lengthy: strong interest inventory and Myers Briggs Type Indicator Career Profile or Career Report with strong profile and strong college profile. But I'm going to really simplify it for you. So starting on page 2 of this report, it's going to give you a layout how everything's going to be kind of presented for you in the initial strong profile. So the first 10 pages of this report is just going to be looking at data from the strong interest inventory assessment. It's the later report at the very end that's going to bring in and cross-reference your Myers Briggs Type Indicator data. So page 3 is section 1, and this is going to introduce you to the general occupational themes. These are basically the 6 broad categories of interests: enterprising interest, artistic interest, conventional, and so forth. And at the bottom, you're going to see a numerical table that's going to score your results. If you're curious to see what each category is really about, because some of these are self-evident, like artistic interest, not too hard to figure out, but like realistic interest don't make too much sense right off the bat, you're going to have that in that middle section under theme descriptions. Now, when you look at your scores, this scale at the bottom may look like it's one set of scores, but it's really 2 built into one. You're going to see a standardized score, and your standardized score is the numerical value on the far right-hand side. So in this case, enterprising 61, 55, and artistic, and so forth. And when we talk about standardized scores, it's going to combine the scores of men and women, and it's going to be based off basically 50 being pretty much within the average, and it's going to go above and below that. It's not a 0 to 100 scale though, but you can roughly think of it that way. Average levels of interest. Now, what makes things a little more interesting is when we look at gender-specific scoring. And the reality is that when it comes to interests, men and women statistically go to the same career fields, sometimes for completely different reasons. So this is when it's important to see whether your interest areas in a category are high compared to a male or a female. Now, this sample individual, Tim's sample, is a male. So you may notice that within each of these bars there's a little word. So enterprising, it says high, and then the next 4, they say moderate, and the bottom one is realistic. These are not looking at 50 as an average, for example. So this is saying his score of 61 in enterprising is high, definitely above average for a male. These scores can, or these wordings can say very little, little, moderate, high, or very high, and relatively speaking. So here you can kind of see that even though the scores between their artistic is 55, social is 49, all of them fall within an acceptable, kind of normal mid-range for males, but there's definitely an elevated interest in enterprising interest and a much, much lower realistic interest, so very little there. If you had these same exact scores for a female, some of these may score slightly differently. In some cases, it's pretty similar. Now, page 4 is going to break things down into the basic interest scales. And these are basically subcategories of interest. They're going to still fall under the 6 main general occupational themes. You have a similar scoring matrix, which again, you're looking at standardized scores numerically here. But the thing that you want to put a little bit more emphasis on, yet again, is what your gender-specific scoring is. So this person, again, their enterprising interests are above average, definitely high, but with an extra emphasis in law, political, and public speaking. And on the other end, things that drop it down just a little bit is marketing, advertising, entrepreneurship. While not low by any means, it's definitely lower than the other areas. So you'll see these ups and downs across all the categories. And again, gives you a little bit more clear and specific view of what you're into and what you're not and how that relates to the average males in this case. Page 5 is going to introduce you to the occupational scale. So these are 130 gender-specific, basically, occupations. This page is going to give you an introduction and also list your top 10 results, as well as your bottom 5. Now, the top 10 are hot linked. And if you were to click on them, if you're viewing this online on a PDF format, it will already take you to the very specific ONA database website page for this occupation, and there you're going to learn a lot about the occupation, everything from income potential, requirements for these jobs, educational requirements, what kind of things people do in these fields, and it is through a government funded organization, so it's not trying to sell you anything like that. The data gets updated on a regular basis, so it gives you really good statistics about these occupations. Now, one word of wording or warning is be careful here. Some people really get tunnel vision looking at their top 10. Most of the individuals I deal with, they have more than 10 options that are viable. So if you only look at your top 10, it can be a little misleading and keep you from focusing on some other options that may also be highly viable depending on certain circumstances. So maybe some of these require a master's degree or a PhD, but you don't want to do that. Well, so what can you get with a bachelor's or a high school diploma, so, or vice versa. So that's an important thing to know. Now, the next page, page 6, starts 3 pages of your main data. And again, this is the things we'll discuss. I'll review more during consultations. But this is going to tell you how you scored. Again, kind of similar results as far as standardized scoring. And then also, in this case, because it's already gender specific, you'll notice there's no wording inside. So you're going to see the mid-range result at 30 to 39. Once you get above 40, it tends to be a much more consistent match. And especially if you score 50 and above. 50 and above, you get to a state where the results basically say you just have a ton in common with, in this case, let's say human resource specialists that are males. You like the same things, you dislike the same things. If you were to ask me, I scored 62 on one and 59 on the other, how much better is that first one than that second one? The reality is, at that point, it's going to be other elements that are likely to decide whether you pursue one or the other. Like, is your educational background a good match? Do you have any other previous work experience that would translate? Is it going to require you to, get more schooling? Does one make a lot more money or the other? That's what's probably going to differentiate those top options. And again, you'll notice that some of these scores can get quite low. Unlike other reports, this is the only one where you can score in the negatives on some of these scores. So I have seen personally as low as negative low 40s, not very common. So you can keep that in mind. So even if something is like a 30 to 40, it's not a horrible score. It's not a horrible mismatch. It doesn't really get bad as far as a match mismatch. You get in the 20s, 10s, and then those negatives. So you'll see that over the next couple pages. Then finally, you're going to have your personal style scales on page 4. And this is closer to how like the Myers Briggs Type Indicator shows data. It's no longer like low to high score. You can now score in the mid-range, and you can have more clear preferences for one or the other. So work style, do you prefer working alone or working with people? And again, this becomes especially important if any of the scores are really extreme, because it may kind of give off a hint that certain areas you may not be as happy in. If a job, for example, your work style preference is working alone, and this was really low, like a 20, but the job forces you to be really social, you got to network a lot, be in large groups. Not that you can't do it, but you may find that part of your job draining, and if it's too excessively draining too often, it will not be a good match for you. Page 10 is a review of your results, kind of a summary page. At the bottom, you're going to see your response summary. It's nothing you really need to know, but if you're curious how often you responded in each of the categories, strongly like, indifferent, etc., it's here. So you also can see your total possible responses. If you missed any, it's noted here. And then typically index, you don't have to worry about that. If that gets too low, it may again tell me that there may be too many inconsistencies. Mainly it occurs if somebody takes this and they're not taking it seriously and just randomly answering, or if they're confused and they're not reading the questions correctly. And if that happens, it's something that I would discuss with you. Now, after page 10, you're going to see it jumps right to the strong college profile. This is the basically optional profile I throw in for free. If you're done with school, this is not going to be necessary. If you're going to college, this can kind of be especially helpful if you're just starting out. First page here is going to talk about your main areas of interest and then some college majors that tend to relate to it. So again, if you're like a junior in high school or senior in high school, you're picking college, you're saying, what major should I pursue? Well, this is not a bad starting area for research. Page 12, it's going to talk about your interests and how that can relate to, for example, campus organizations or activities, internships or job settings for the summer that can relate to those interests, and even some sample college courses that you can try out, see if you like them, because if you do, that may reinforce those interests. Page 13, I love this section. It's going to tell you, identify your top strong occupations, and then tell you, hey, what kind of education level I'm going to need to get there. You can find this on Own It as well, but this kind of is a bit of a cheat sheet. So you'll notice in this example, this person, some of them, they can get away with an AA. Some are going to need a bachelor's, master's, or even above. Generally speaking, when they have multiple areas like the elected public official, more often than not, to get that real advantage, you lean on the heavy side. So minimum master's or law degree, much less on that lower level if you want a statistical advantage. But again, not always required. I also love the related careers. So each occupational scale represents a batch of different careers. And here's a couple examples. There's more listed on ONET. Page 14 is going to look at those personal style skills we viewed earlier, but now give you feedback related to how that affects school environments, not necessarily work environments. You can also download a free little PDF here at the bottom that's hot linked, that step-by-step kind of tips on how to apply your strong results to college majors. After that, we fall into the final report here, which is the Strong and MBTI Combined Career Report. Now, the combined report is going to pull your interest data and then your personality type data and basically show you what directions you may want to look at if you want to factor in both elements. Hey, is this going to feed my natural interest that I've developed over time? And is it going to match with my innate personality type? So you're going to get a little description of that, your results, an overview here on page 16, as you see. He's going to tell you top interests. This person's enterprising and artistic and INTP. And when you combine that, on page 17, you're going to see this person's an enterprising INTP, the independent persuader. And there's different names for these different combinations. And it's going to tell you about enterprising work environments, talk how your type is at work, and how these combinations work together. So really kind of interesting information. Page 18 is going to cross-reference your personality type with those personal style skills again. Sometimes your personality type will emphasize your work style preference, or learning environment preference, etc. Sometimes it will be a counter to that, which can happen as well, and this will tell you what that means. Page 19 and 20 is going to go into your basically top 10 combined results. So this may be similar to your strong top 10, but it can also be quite a bit different because some areas, when you factor in your personality type, are no longer quite as good of a match as they were before. So they will again be linked to ONET for further information. When you get to page 21, it's going to also have this area called additional occupations to explore. So unlike the strong profile where you saw all the data for all the results, here they're going to home in on the previous pages on your top 10, but also give you these additional occupations to explore. Think of these as like option 2. They're still viable. They're not low scores. Situationally, they could have potential, but you would look at them after those initial top 10 options. And again, as mentioned earlier, action step throughout this report. And then finally, a bit of a career development strategy section here, how to move forward. Whether you're starting out, whether you are considering a career change, or again, sometimes it's as simple as you like most of the things you're doing at work, but there's a couple things that are a mismatch. You maybe want to find something that's similar, but slightly different to kind of find a dream job situation. So that's a big option. And then finally, it comes down to an option as simple as balancing your personal life with your work life. Maybe you like your job, but it's killing you at home. It's causing damage at home, and you got to make a change, and that's where this element would come into play. So again, lots of great information, extensive kind of tips, step-by-step instructions how to use the report over the last couple pages here. I hope this video has been helpful. I hope that this video has given you a good understanding of the consultation process that I provide with my Best Fit Career Identification package. If you're enjoying my content, then please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to be updated when new videos drop. And for watching until the end, you can enter discount code BESTFITC2020 at checkout for $10 off of your purchase. That's BESTFITC2020. See you next time on your journey to a healthier body and mind.